about connecting social media to depression in particular and suicidal outcomes. She had studied generational differences and noticed that in this generation of kids, their mental health was declining. The statistics are showing that. Suicide is up 33% among this generation of kids. But there really was no link to an explanation as to why. And now here we have a link. And she studied in particular social media. So why? Why are we seeing these mental health issues, particularly around social media? What I'll say is the preface is that it's not just social media, it's gaming, it's it's the device in general, it's the lack of social interaction and the isolation that it creates. So that's structurally, I think, why we're seeing what we're seeing, but in particular with social media, we're seeing kids who are looking for attention, they're looking for validation, they're looking for something outside of themselves to make them feel good. And that's addictive, especially when you're of this age where you don't feel very good about yourself, you're trying to figure yourself out, you're trying to discover who you are, you're comparing yourself to everybody else. Well, now you have this platform where that is just non-stop, constant, all day long, and all night long, because they're on their phones all night. And that's just not going to make you feel very good at the end of the day. They think it makes them feel good because they think they're connecting to their friends. And they are. They're talking to their friends nonstop, just like we did when we were in high school, on the phone, with the cord, and you had to make sure the cord was long enough to go in your room and close the door so nobody else heard you, right? And if you were, in my family, you had 3 brothers that were constantly listening to your conversation so they could make fun of you later. They are completely isolated in their rooms oftentimes. I really wish that Riley had opened it up to questions because she talked about being withdrawn, and her mom talked about her being withdrawn. I was curious as to if she was on her phone when she was off away from the family, because I see a lot of that in my practice. So here they are, withdrawing, just like Riley's mom said. Yeah, that's normal. That's normal adolescent behavior. They do. They start to see themselves as people outside of their families, and their friends become important, and that's all very normal and fine. But when they're isolating themselves and they're alone in the room with this device, and they think they're connecting to people, they really aren't, because they're not getting the kind of validation that they're looking for on there, right? If they post something, they want 500 likes because they have 500 friends. Well, they're not getting 500 likes. They might get 20, they might get 30, they might even get 50. But to them, that's not enough. They want everybody to see this post. They want everyone to pay attention. And if they're not paying attention, then it becomes this process that they tell themselves in their heads because they're by themselves. I don't have friends, people don't like me, my post isn't good enough, I'm not, I don't look good, or, whatever they tell themselves, so that they then retreat further and further and internalize that and become depressed and become anxious and really don't know where to turn. Because they're turning to their friends, which is fine, nothing wrong with going to your friends when you have a problem, but your friend isn't really going to know how to help you with this problem that is something that you're not even aware of. You're not aware that this is affecting your development. And so the friends might not say the right thing. They might not do the right thing. And so then that makes the child feel even more isolated and alone and not good enough. Because, oh no, now my friend, can't help me. So now where do I go? The adults don't understand because the adults think that this stuff is bad. Well, now what? So they're more and more internalized with the way that they feel. And they're developing a very large lack of coping skills because of it. They don't know how to deal with the day-to-day stuff that comes up in their lives because all they know how to do is go right to that device or right to that social media platform and express the way that they feel, and then again not get what they're looking for in return. So here we are with this generation of kids that feels alone, they feel isolated, I liked what Riley said about loneliness, that, there's something to be said about that eye contact, that one-on-one. And the middle schools around here finally banned the devices during the day. They're off and away now. I'm hearing from the counselors that kids are talking to each other. They're talking to each other. Can you believe it? And there really was little to no pushback, even from the kids, which I was extremely surprised about. I thought that they would be rioting in the streets. But I think that that's what they want from us. They need us to contain this for them. They need us to say, hey, this isn't good for you. We're taking this away. And that feels good to them, because finally then they get to look their friend in the eye. And they get to see their friend and say, yeah, I had a bad night last night. And their friend could give them that, that sympathetic look. Well, you don't see that nonverbal communication when you're on the screen. So they might give you like a sad face emoji or something on your post, but that doesn't feel as validating or as like comforting as your friend like giving you a sympathetic look. And they're in this environment where then when they're talking to each other, there's adults around. So then they're a little bit more likely to go to the counselor or go to the teacher when they're feeling something, instead of, again, being isolated and alone in their room, feeling like mom and dad don't understand and nobody cares. So in terms of what can the adults do, when I say contain, I like to describe it like this. If you picture this room like half the size, and that size of the room has about 50 tennis balls just bouncing everywhere, off the ceiling, off the walls. If you can imagine the tennis balls being their feelings, a child's feelings, a young person, a teenager's feelings, the adult's job isn't to take the tennis balls all out of the room, which I think to modern parenting is take the tennis balls away. An adult's job is to take their arms and contain the tennis balls and let them bounce and let them be out of control, but kind of have a container around them, like a protective container that helps the chaos. And then their feelings become just about their feelings. They don't become about all the things that they're looking for from their friends and their social media. And then when it becomes just about their feelings, they become a little bit easier to deal with. So what do I mean by that container? Rules and boundaries. That's one thing I don't see a lot of. And it's not really the parents' fault. I think these things came on the scene and everybody was doing it, and schools were not only accepting it, but they were actually encouraging it. And so I think the parents just felt like, okay, yeah, this is what we do now. This is 2014, and this is what we're going to do. And here they are, not having really given, the tools, the rules, the boundaries, or even the kids having the readiness to have these devices. So now Pandora's box has been open for an entire generation of kids, but we're obviously peeling back and doing things about this for all of it tonight. The schools have, like I said, finally, and the middle schools have finally banned phones. I think that if you prevent a child from having a phone until they're high school age, so somewhere around 13 or 14, then by high school they're really more able to regulate themselves. I'm not saying they're all going to regulate themselves. They're all going to sort of still engage in their stuff, and maybe even have some addictive behavior around it. But their executive functioning is a little more developed by then, so it's a little bit easier to talk to them about limits and rules and boundaries and what can we do to help you manage this. So that's definitely something that the parents can do. If you have kids that are already older and have had phones for a long time, it's not too late. They can peel back on their usage. It's hard. They'll fight it. They'll even try to scheme and do whatever they can to keep that relationship going online. But I always try to empower parents to know that you can make this change. You can contain all of those feelings for them. One other point that I wanted to make about the development around this is that when I do social histories, mostly I get kids that are teenage age by the time they get to me. But I do social histories and I kind of, ask, where did this start? And 9 times out of 10, kids' anxiety or depression or whatever kind of, bad feelings they have started somewhere around 3rd or 4th grade. And this is typical, actually, and very expected, and I'm not surprised when I hear this, because at 9 years old, so between 9 and 10, but generally right around 9, a kid goes through a very big developmental growth spurt, an emotional growth spurt. And they start to look at themselves as individuals outside of their family. They still have one foot in early childhood, so you might still see stuffed animals on the bed at this age. But their friends start to become more important to them. And so parents, of course, react to that normally and naturally, just as they should, and allow friendships to, sort of foster and allow kids to kind of go off and do their thing. But this can be very anxiety-producing for kids. They don't know what's going on. They don't recognize the feelings. They don't even really know how to talk about the feelings. And while they seem like they're all excited about growing up and being independent, they still kind of need that container that I was talking about. So what I notice is that this is when a lot of devices get introduced, the iPads, the gaming, and even cell phones now. I mean, I'm seeing kids even this young getting a cell phone. So this age is a very important age to understand where they're at developmentally and where they're at emotionally, because when you give them those things, those devices, they become distractions. And it becomes very easy for a kid to use that to feel good instead of talking and dealing with what might be normal anxiety about growing up. So the point I'm making is that here you have kids that are really just experiencing normal kid stuff, but these devices are complicating their development and complicating the way that they deal with it. So, with that being said, are there any questions or comments? The other group was very lively and had a lot to say and even interrupted me, so. So go ahead.
So I have a 22-year-old, so he graduated in May, and it was really interesting. So smartphones didn't really come into his being probably until like high school, so I had a good chunk of time. But that's where the rubber met the road, is when he interned at GM and then he had a job at GM. There was a very strict policy about when they were walking down the hall, their cell phone was not to be out with their head down. Their cell phone was in their pocket, greeting people, like making eye contact. And I'll be honest with you, that was the hardest thing in his internship as a junior, and then when he went full-time at GM just this past July. And I was really strict on screen time and everything like that, but I think it's important for kids to realize that this is, like you said, about analyzing nonverbal behavior, being able to look people in the eye, and that's what employers are seeking now. Like in internships and full-time jobs, because he came home and he's like, the first 2 days, he was like, I didn't look at my phone on for over 12 hours, and he was like, we're pleased. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, when you're at your job, that's what you have to do. And he just said they had a very strict policy about when you are, as soon as you walk in the door and you're in a main thoroughfare, your phone is to be in your pocket.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we talk to our kids about that and what it looks like when you have a job or you have an internship. So
yeah, absolutely.
But I would even take that one step further and be the model of that, because so often we talk to our friends, our family members, and what I always say is, when you're texting somebody, you miss so much from a text, whereas when you hear it on the phone and you're saying, hey, how are you doing? And somebody says, oh, I'm fine, over text sounds totally different. On the phone sounds totally different. Looking at somebody in the face and knowing you're not really fine. And you can miss that so easily in a text. And I think it is really important that we be the model and have those face-to-face conversations, or even just if it's on the phone, with someone from across the country or whatever.
That's right, because I see a lot of kids that are going to each other for their mental health stuff. So while it's good that they're talking about it, they're expressing how they feel, they're not going to the adults. So, and maybe the adults in their lives aren't modeling that, it's okay to talk about your feelings. And I really like what Bradley was saying about vulnerability. And one of the things I think that's working for her community is that they're being vulnerable to each other, to their peers, but in the presence of adults. Because that's really what's missing in the kids that I see. They are going to each other and they're not helping each other. They're actually like magnifying it and sort of making it worse. So yeah, the adults I think need to model. Let's talk about it. Yeah, and let's not pretend that we're fine when we're really not.
And let's not just discuss it over text.
That's right. Because you can't read somebody over text. Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, my daughter, who's a psychologist, withheld the phone. Finally, at age 13, she had to give in because her son was out of the loop.
Yeah.
This is how the kids communicate.
Yeah.
He wasn't finding out whether they were going to a movie or whatever. He was being, well, not ostracized specifically, but he just didn't have a phone to get the messages. So
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I started talking about this 3 years ago, because I remember being an individual with parents and saying, well, you need to take away the phone, right? That's from a therapist's perspective, the phone's the problem, or part of the problem, okay? I'm not going to blame the phone completely. And then it became this, but their friends and but everybody else, and so I thought, well, if I start talking about this, if I start making it like a community issue, then maybe other parents will do this and follow suit. And I'm guessing that other parents also feel the same way. They feel a little bit stuck. And so, I have to say, it was very frustrating 3 years ago when it was like throw the tomatoes at the messenger. But here we are now, 3 years later, and the schools are even finally saying, yeah, we need to be done with this. So it's a little bit, I think, easier now for parents, even just in this community this year, easier for parents to say, hey, not until high school. What does that look like after school? What does that look like on the weekends? Well, maybe that's part of the conversation. Like, okay, if you feel isolated, you're not going to get it at school. You can't have it at school. Maybe you can introduce it a little bit here and there after school or on the weekends. But again, with limits, not just a free pass like I think it was given originally. Yeah.
So has anybody here seen the Screenagers movie? Okay, so I thought that was a really good way to introduce that type of dialogue.
Yes.
And when my first daughter got her phone, there was a contract that we signed.
Yeah.
And like, the biggest thing is, you can look at me the wrong way and the phone is mine. And they had to initial it and sign it, and I think that gave them a little empowerment over that, but to have those rules and whatnot. My biggest issue is, as a parent, we need to model appropriate behavior for cell phone use. And my husband is not on board. Somehow the rules do not apply to him, and the kids are aware of that. And so they will call him out on it, and so he doesn't do anything. Well, if dad gets to keep his phone in his bedroom, why can't he keep it in mine? And so for like 1 week, we did the whole charging station. I am still the only person that uses the charging station. I'm just like, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna be the higher person, the model. But that's out of my control. I can't control what my husband does. But it's frustrating.
Yeah, and that has been definitely increasingly a big part of the conversation, is what about parents? And that's complicated, because sure, none of us grew up this way, right? And some of us feel like we can manipulate ourselves, some of us are,
I think he's aware that he's addicted,
Yeah.
but
So that's a good point.
he
Well,
really is. I mean,
It's about boundaries, seriously, because that's how I feel. Like, my phone is shut off for work by like 8 o'clock.
he
I
sits
mean,
next to me,
it's-
he's constantly going
Yeah,
through this original
but that's
conversation
the thing.
with me too, but I'm like, those are his choices. Well, so,
Well, and maybe,
sorry, this is
just,
my therapy session.
yeah.
That's a good point, like you said, what you had mentioned about role modeling, and we need to reflect back. But then talking with your kids, like, is that good work balance. Dad's still working on it. We're parents and we're not.
Oh, Dad's not working on it.
Well, I mean, yeah, so however you frame that, but we're not perfect as parents either. But to try and model a healthy, because it's, yeah, it gets insane where you can be getting calls and emails and stuff at work. There's gotta be a cutoff point where.
So I feel after 9/11, okay, when now the parents are freaking out, I want to be able to contact my child at school at any time, because my niece was actually had to be locked down because of, in Washington DC for the, whatchamacallit. And it was a rough several hours for my sister because she could not get a hold of her daughter. So then the cell phones come out because I want to be able to contact you. So I know I don't try to get over my kids during school, but after school I expect you to answer my text or answer the phone. Well, so I'm working outside today, my phone's outside, and my daughter apparently called me like 8 times and sending me texts and all this stuff because she wanted me to pick up. So she walks home, she walks in the door, she's just livid about now where is your phone? I'm like, did you try calling the house phone? Like, use your resources, you've got that number too. Like, I'm gonna tell you, I'm not always gonna have my phone on me. And I get, your battery might run down, whatever, but you can't treat me like that, and it's a phone.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, yeah, it's not just 9/11, it's the school shootings, it's, we are an anxious culture, right? Especially parents, we are anxious about our kids. And because we get the news, right when it happens, and it's circulating, and it's scary stuff. So we've developed now into this fear that, if someone doesn't answer their phone, something's wrong. If someone's not available, something's wrong. Parents are tracking their kids, like 360 is like this. Right? And we all feel really safe with that. But in the end, we're creating anxiety.
Yeah.
So I didn't really talk about anxiety because the study that I referenced really specifically studied depression and suicide. But anxiety is under this category as well. That, we as parents have to work through our own fears about what's going on with them and where they are, so that we can give them that freedom and independence to make mistakes, because they will, and to help them with consequences and with what to do about those mistakes, but we can't prevent them. And so the more we are testing them all day during the school day, the more we are checking in, the more we're expecting them to check in, is anxiety producing. So now we're creating a whole generation of kids that are anxious too. Yeah. So
That's a good point.
On a different note, I noticed so many mothers are walking their babies and others are on their phones.
Yeah.
And then I attended a lecture and learned that kindergartens do not have the language development today that they did have half a dozen years ago.
that's right. Speech and language is not developing.
That's right.
Yeah. And even this came up because there was an OT in the group last time that their physical cells aren't developing either, because they're like this. So their necks are problematic, their fine motor skills are problematic. So yeah, I mean, if I'm saying don't introduce this, with freedom in high school, then we certainly shouldn't be giving 2, 3, 4-year-olds these educational apps that are being peddled as a good thing, but are actually just impeding on their development. Yeah.
I witnessed, what are the hoverboard, right, there's one wheel, whatever the thing that they ride on?
Yeah.
Couldn't have been more than first grader on that, and they had a phone. And I'm like, I try not to judge, I really don't. But I'm like, will this child learn how to ride a bike ever? I mean, like, is that taken out? Not that one is right or wrong, it's just so foreign.
Well, right, and there's this school of thought that, look, this is our life now, right? That we have to accept that the kids are going to grow up differently than we did. This is our generation's version of TV in the 50s or whatever. I'm not buying that. Because this is so much different. This is like their physical cells are developing. If mom is on the phone, if dad is on the phone with a baby, their attachment isn't developing.
Right.
That's disturbing. That's not just, the TV got introduced to the family after dinner. This is stuff that develop, it's a science, child development. So their development doesn't change. Just because we add something new to our culture doesn't mean kids are going to start growing differently. Well, not now. I mean, eventually I suppose they'll evolve into something, and that's pretty scary to think about.
So what do you do, like Apple or something?
No, but the Apple has like an app now, just kind of like when cars came out, there weren't car seats or seat belts.
Yeah.
And then there's accidents they see, so then,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, you know, the government regulations. But Apple has put on stuff about mindfulness and how long you're using your phone, and I guess in the newer Apple, I heard something about that.
They all
That
are.
they're tracking it because they know that people are not present in the moment.
That's right.
Because their phone is their fifth appendage.
That's right. Yeah, but it's interesting about Silicon Valley because they knew all of this. They actually, they created algorithms. They employed people that were specialists in how to get people coming back, how to get people addicted to this. And now all of a
That is
sudden,
so true.
yeah, now all of a sudden they're talking about how bad it is. So I think it's just more of their, you know, they want to show concern in some way.
It's more manipulation.
It's more manipulation. It's like big tobacco.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, they can
So
sell it.
they're already,
Yeah.
It's total manipulation. It's PR manipulation. It's just like they used to put their subliminal messages in Coke ads at the movies. I mean, they spend a lot of money to craft ways to manipulate the consumers. So, I mean, listening to all this, it's like I'm turning 50, so I grew up in the generation where I, took the phone into the closet with a long cord and sat in the dark and talked privately. I didn't have a phone in my room until I was like 21 years old. I never had a phone in my room. Didn't have a TV in my room until I was 18. And I went to school with kids who had TVs in their rooms and had phones in their rooms from 13 and up. And we didn't have video games in my house. We didn't have cable television in my house. So I was, very, what's the word? When you're not given things.
Right.
I was kind of a child.
But it wasn't really around.
So
People
things.
didn't come into being and that
Where I'm going with this is, when we were kids and we were punished, it was no phone for a week. It was no TV for a few days. And the same kind of punishments should apply to the screens and the phones and the iPads and the blah, blah, blah. And these kids, by our example, since we're talking about parents leading by example, these kids should be able to be guided by us to find alternative ways to communicate and not be out of the loop with their friends. And so that when they're in school, you know what, go find Jesse and say, are we all meeting at the park on Tuesday? Are we doing kickball? Are we going ice skating? I'm not allowed to use the phone, so I gotta know now. Let me know by tomorrow, because you're not gonna be able to call me, my parents don't know how to use the phone. Find other ways to communicate and guide your kids. Don't tell them to figure it out, or whatever it takes for us as parents. Because, I have a 4-year-old, and all of this is scaring the Jesus out of me. So, we have to get more creative in, trying to, guide our children. And you know what? You are going to get your phone taken away, but figure it out. This is another way, this is how you can figure out, do you want me to call? I call a parent and ask her, are they driving? Do they need me to drive? I can coordinate with their parent. No, don't call their parent. Okay, fine. When you go to school tomorrow, find Jesse and tell him you need to know, make your plan.
My son won't go across the street to
I
our
know.
neighbor's house
I
to
know.
see if Michael is home to play.
And then another thing,
Texted
did you
mom.
notice?
I said, no.
When you said that the kids didn't freak out about the middle schools taking the phones away, they didn't freak out, and they were okay with it because everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just your kid being singled out and you don't get your phone now. So it's like, I feel like when everybody's on board, it makes things so much easier and the transition is not,
When they can have a guy
stressful for us or for the kids.
And the pendulum is swinging. I hear about now
mean, we have so many Facebook pages, you know, maybe we need to, you know, start talking about this in our community Facebook groups and be like, you know, hey, here's a great idea, parent, you know, who would be on board with this? Like, when your kids come over, you do a cell phone check-in, you know, or, you know, encourage your children to find other ways to make plans. Because you know what, sometimes I'm going to take, my kid's going to get punished, she's going to have this phone taken away. I want him to feel like it's the end of the world and he's isolated now.
That's right.
Maybe we all need to just start these conversations more amongst ourselves and spread it in the community. I mean, I don't know.
Do we have an intervention for my husband?
That's just as bad. And I'm not saying that I'm innocent, I'm on my phone a lot too, but I do at least really try not to be, or to put it away, or, but he comes home from work and he's like, and I have to tell him, can you put your phone down and play with it for like an hour?
I will
He
say,
gets irritated
with my husband's job, like, you know, back then he had the BlackBerry, you know, that first
Me too.
time, because he had
Me
to be reached.
Yeah.
And he's just never gotten out of that
I know.
habit. And so when we go on vacation, it takes a full 3 days for him to truly
To
unplug
detox. Yeah.
from work. And so I know that now, and so I'm like, oh, day 3, nice.
I've had that experience personally, that I'm on call a lot of times, you know, if somebody's suicidal or somebody's in crisis, I have to be attached to my phone, and I find myself being anxious when I'm not, when I don't have it, even if someone's not in crisis,
Right.
just in case.
Right.
So, yeah, I do. I think that's why it's complicated for us adults,
Yeah.
because some of us have jobs where it has
Right.
Because we're not using it for the social media, we're not using it for gaming,
Right.
we're using it as a telephone.
That's right, but my kids don't know that, right? They see me attached to my phone. My son made a comment a few months ago, Mom, you're always checking your email. So I don't know, he must know what the button is, the Gmail button. And so I explained to him, I said, well, that's my work email, and I'm always checking it because I have people that need me or whatever. But again, he's not gonna remember that, you know, a month later when he wants my attention, and I'm not giving that to him. So
Just out of curiosity, I'm wondering how many people in this room actually have like a hard line telephone?
yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
I refuse to get out.
I have one and I'm like, who can install this in my house? Because I would love, I think if I could use that more and my kids could use it more,
Yeah.
I mean, at least it's something that they're, you know, they can still communicate with their friends, but they're not, you know, they're not tempted to just the texting and everything else that's
Yeah.
involved with this. That's not just a phone conversation.
Well, I'll tell you, I like for a certain age group, I like those watches, the Gizmo watches, because you can control who, you can put 10 contacts in there and that's it. And you can say who they are, and you know, it's texting, but you have to have the app on your phone to text. So it's mostly just calling.
Yeah.
And so I like at that age, they can still call their friends, or they can, you know, have grandma and grandpa on there, whatever, they feel like they can still connect on their own with their own device, but it's not a smart device.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. You too. That's
Oh, of
right.
course.
Yeah, I think it works great. My almost 11-year-old has one, and I like it a lot.
I just want the old rotary phone.
Yeah.
Which I actually have. I'm like, you would give up on calling your friends if you had to.
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm just gonna get on my bike
It
and
takes
do it.
forever, especially if you have to dial their area code too.
We do have a long cord, like it's
A
like
long
in our
cord.
basement.
Oh, yeah. And you would know, like my brothers, they would pick up the phone,
The
you would
big
know
yellow.
when somebody was on the other line, you know, because you would just hear it click and
Right.
pick up, and then your anxiety would go up, like,
Well, I think it also helped too. I was a single parent, so when my son got his phone, he had to pay for a portion. When he went over his overage, he was calling Verizon. I think I had to put the pinch on him, and like I said, it might have been easier for me because I didn't have any finance, like he had to put in for that. So, I feel like that kind of helped him in like mediating because he was paying for his phone bill when he was 14.
Oh, my daughter
He
gives me
helped,
$15
yeah.
almost
Yeah,
every
I
month
mean,
because she
they
goes
saw
over our
phone.
data.
Right, and then when their dad went over, he's calling Verizon, I was right there, no, you gotta know how to deal. So I think involving them at whatever developmentally is appropriate for them, we try and include them because they're gonna have to know. It's You know, it's like, oh, here, you get your cell phone, mom and dad paid for it, you don't know the overages or anything like that, so.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because I'm becoming more aware of the apps in general, like the weather app, for example. My kids were grabbing their phone in the mornings, when this time of year, right, and it might be cold, and then it gets warm, and then you dress, or whatever, and I felt uncomfortable about it. This was this past spring, but I didn't really put a stop to it, because I thought, well, it's innocent. And then I thought about it, and I thought, no, they need to learn how to use their brain to decide, okay, it's springtime, it's cold, it's probably gonna warm up later. So I should wear pants, I should wear short sleeves, and I should bring a sweatshirt. Maybe I can throw a pair of shorts in my backpack if it gets really hot later.
Yeah, the newspaper delivered.
Yeah, yeah, but they're every day. Well, I say, open the door, feel the weather, and then decide that it probably won't get warm later, or it might rain, right? So be prepared for that, but use your brain. Don't just use an app that thinks for you, because we might, that's convenient for us, and we might be fine with that, but we already learned how to develop around using our brain about
At
the
the
weather.
same time, it's Michigan, it could be anything. You're gonna have to have snow pants and
Yes,
shorts.
exactly, yes.
It's like bonding with the parent instead of eye contact. It's a phone. Oh, the phone is real important. Same thing with contact with nature. Now in parks where people used to enjoy looking at the surroundings, listening to the birds, everybody's looking at that screen, and life becomes, minimized.
That's right, exactly. And we're not seeing what's around us. So that isolation and that loneliness is really ever present. What did you say?
I said, we're a hot mess.
Yeah, well, to end, maybe we can
That's why Nicole's here.
yeah,
Card.
let's take some hope out of this and know that we can do something about this. Where the pendulum has swung in this direction long enough. Now we're actually starting to become more aware. And, studies are showing that kids, when they get their phones removed, their empathy goes up, their mood goes up. And so this is undoable and is treatable. This isn't, a be-all, end-all for kids. But we really do have to get strong with containing and with the boundaries for them, because that's what